Welcome everyone to Application Prep 7, the transfer application checklist. We've got a great session for you today that I hope is very helpful for navigating the transfer application process and answering any and all questions you have. We've got two experts on the call today. My name is Emily. I'm an admissions officer, joined by my colleague Marin and my colleague Greg. So if you'd both like to introduce yourselves. Marin.
Thank you so much, Emily. My name is Marin. I am most likely the person that you've been emailing with about transfer application materials. Also, perhaps Sarah, who is not with us this evening. But anyway, I happen to be the transfer specialist in our office, and I'm very excited to be here to uh, see you all and help you get ready for the application next month. But I'm really going to be acting as chat manager for today's session. So while Emily presents, I'm going to be in the background addressing some questions. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A chat box, which is a few icons to the right from the regular chat box where you let us know where you're tuning in from. You might find it in that under the icon, the more icon with three dots. Anyway, if you put in the Q&A chat box, it allows us to keep track of them so your questions don't get buried. But also, a lot of the questions that you have very well may be addressed in the presentation as well. So, but anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Greg to introduce himself before we get started.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Greg Knott. I'm the associate registrar here at RISD. I process all of the transfer credit that comes in from all your previous institutions and examinations. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. So throw them in the Q&A for us.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're excited to jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Marin, just let me know that you are seeing the correct option here.
Yep, it looks great.
All right, I am going to turn off my camera, and I believe Marin and Greg will turn off their cameras as well while we're presenting, just to make sure we don't have any Wi-Fi hiccups. And then we'll join back with our faces once the sort of the presentation portion of today is over. All right, so welcome everyone to Application Prep 7, the transfer application checklist. We completely understand how overwhelming the application process can be. And with that in mind, we want to provide you with a checklist for the transfer application and give you the resources to navigate the process. Please keep in mind that this is a more general overview and checklist of the transfer application. If you want to go more into depth about certain elements of the application, I recommend checking out Application Prep 2, hosted by Marin, from earlier in the application cycle. And we also have a number of other online info programs like RISD 101s and portfolio tips. But before we get into the presentation, I just want to mention that this is the number 7 in our application prep series for the 2026 cycle. So we do a bunch of these every year. For transfer students, the most applicable are going to be App Prep 2, App Prep 3, 5, and this current one, 7. And you'll be able to find recordings of the previous ones on our YouTube channel if you want to kind of take a beat and rewind. All right, so today we will be covering all the information you need to check off your list as we approach the application deadline. It's actually quite perfect that today is February 17th because it means we're exactly a month out from the transfer deadline. So we'll start with the process as a whole. We'll talk about eligibility. We'll cover deadlines. I already mentioned it, but we'll go over it again. Transfer application process, and then really like the key piece of information to today's session is that, of course, we're joined by Greg from the registrar's office, so he'll go more into depth about what transferring credits actually looks like from a more logistical standpoint when you get to RISD. We'll talk a little bit about portfolio tips, next steps, and then we'll have plenty of time for FAQ section as well as just a conversational Q&A. So the first thing I want to make sure everyone's aware of is that we have eligibility requirements for transfer admission that you can find on our website. I've sort of highlighted the most important elements. The first being that you need 24 or more college credits to be eligible for the transfer application process to RISD. High school students are ineligible regardless of the amount of college credits you have. because we typically consider those double-dipped credits. And then students who have already earned a bachelor's degree are also ineligible to apply as transfers. So there's sort of a sweet spot right there in the middle that makes you eligible for the transfer application process. We only accept transfer credits from accredited institutions. What do we mean by that? We just mean that it's a regionally accredited residential nonprofit college and university. So RISD will accept credit from, a number of different types of institutions, but you should make sure using the U.S. Department of Education's database to determine if your U.S. school is accredited. For international students, you can inquire directly with your school to see about their accreditation. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. The other question that we get, I'm going to go back really quickly. You'll note that we tend to recommend having at least 12 credits in the liberal arts, so about half of your total college credits in the liberal arts. What is a liberal arts credit? It basically means any course credit in the liberal arts, mathematics, science, foreign languages, subjects outside of art, fine art, design, and studio courses. So your standard English course, sociology, psychology, intro to chemistry, those types of classes tend to sort of fit within the liberal arts genre. And that's because at RISD, your curriculum breakdown is basically 2/3 of your courses take place in studio and 1/3 take place in the liberal arts. So it's helpful to come in with that balance already in place to some extent. Okay, so let's talk about deadlines. As you may know, our deadline coming up is March 17th for the summer-fall transfer entry term. We do not offer a spring entry term for transfer students here at RISD, so keep that in mind, but it means you have exactly a month left to submit your application. The most important thing to submit by the deadline is the application. We won't have your file in our system until you submit that application itself. So take deadlines seriously, but also know that we are flexible and can work with you if some unforeseen circumstances arise. One more deadline to keep in mind is the financial aid deadline. Please submit your FAFSA and your RISD institutional financial aid form by April 1st. You need to submit both of those forms to be considered for financial aid at RISD. You'll find both forms in your applicant portal once you've begun the application process, and we'll talk a little bit more about where to find those at the end. But if you have any further questions about what RISD might look like for you and your family financially, I recommend reaching out directly to the Student Financial Services office, and we're happy to provide their contact info as well. Okay, so transfer app requirements. This is the most basic version of the checklist. You're going to submit your transfer application, which is different from our first year application. Keep that in mind, not the Common App. You're going to upload your portfolio of 12 to 20 works, which is also going to be submitted via your applicant portal. You'll need a personal statement. You'll need your academic transcripts from both high school and college. You'll need some letters of recommendation, 1 to 3. You will need English proficiency exam results from TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo if English is a second language. You can receive a waiver for this if you are currently enrolled in an English-speaking college or university. And then you can submit SAT or ACT scores if you would like to, but know that that is completely optional. So this is the sort of the bare bones checklist for the transfer app. Let's talk about, how to actually submit a transfer application. Maybe some of you have already done this. Maybe some of you are just starting to think about actually putting all of these elements together. So, join us on this journey. You're going to start by going to the website, admissions, click down to transfer, and then you'll see a big button that says apply now. So you're going to click that button to access the admissions portal. If this is, your first time making a transfer application to RISD, then create an account. It should be pretty straightforward. All the usual suspects here in terms of email address and name as well. So you'll then navigate to a page that tells you what it looks like to apply as a transfer student. you'll press Start Transfer Application, and once you start an application, you can always return to your in-progress application from this landing page. So we can see here an in-progress application for our hypothetical applicant, Marin, also known as Rin, and sort of we'll be walking through with Marin on this application process. So next up is going to be instructions and major of interest. So you'll see that's the next tab right on the left-hand side of the application. This is going to be all of your basic information, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here today. Again, March 17th deadline, all the different elements you need to include. But really the main sort of note of interest here is that you do need to select a major of interest that you're applying to. You have 17 options, and you do need to pick one when you're applying. You can find more information about each major if you click on it on the drop-down menu, but I also recommend exploring on the website and sort of navigating what you want out of your transfer college experience. So this is the list of our 17 undergraduate majors. Please note that transfer admissions is based on space availability within each major. So admissions really has no way of knowing how much space will be available prior to that March 17th application deadline. So that's why it's a space-dependent process. With that being said, the painting department is not accepting transfer students for fall 2026 or the foreseeable future due to a record number of painting major declarations in the last handful of years. So I'm really sorry to say that painting is not a major of interest option for transfer students. But we do have two majors this year that are actually new to the transfer application process. So I hope that is exciting to folks who are interested in that pathway. So the two new majors that I kind of want to highlight really quickly, we just introduced majors in art and computation and sound. So these grew out of our computation technology and culture concentration. They debuted sort of last year and are now welcoming transfer students. So we're really excited about both of these programs. Again, do your research, learn about each major, this is a screenshot from the academic section of the website. So you can find a ton of information about curriculum, course descriptions, student work, faculty, all of that good stuff. And then, of course, join us next week for yet another webinar, but this one's going to be a really, really good one. Tuesday, February 24th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to have a webinar, RISD 101, Art and Computation and Sound. So this is going to be where you can learn from some core faculty members about these two new majors in our Computation Technology and Culture department. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I actually might just attend to learn more myself. So if you want to learn more, that's the place to do it. So again, back to our application, you'll select a major of interest. And then the next section is biographical information. That is straightforward. It's just all the information you've been putting on forms for your most of your life, likely. And then the additional info section. So here we're going to ask you about any languages you're fluent in. This is also where you can include SAT or ACT scores if you want to, but they are truly optional. If you put a language other than English as your first language, then you will be required to submit English proficiency results. This is required for all applicants who speak English as a second, third, fourth, any type of secondary language. So if that applies to you, you have three options: TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. You'll find a bunch more information down there below. And then, like I mentioned before, it is possible to have the language test requirement waived if you are already enrolled in an institution where English is the language of instruction. So reach out to us if that's the case. You'll also find here is where we will ask you about the college classes you've taken or in the process of taking. So again, to apply as a transfer, you'll need to have 1 full year at an accredited college by June of the year in which you're applying. So you'll need to have 24 college credits by June 2026 if you'd like to enter this fall. When we're reading your applications, we're going to be looking at the transcript for lots of information, and Greg will maybe touch on this as well. But it's also helpful for us to, for you to calculate the breakdown of how many total arts do you have, and then how many of those might be considered liberal arts. Okay, so we're going to talk about academic history, and then I'm going to pass it off to my colleague. So the first two things that should be in your head for academic history, basically, we'd love to see, or we need to see, sort of your final high school transcripts or GED with proof of graduation. So typically, what that looks like is you'll reach out to your high school and ask them for your final high school transcript. On it, it'll have a date of graduation. If you took the GED or if you graduated high school, a long time ago, perhaps, you can always reach out to us to kind of arrange what that might look like. And then we do need to see up-to-date college transcripts. So these can be unofficial or official, but just know that if you do end up coming to RISD, we will need those official copies. So in the application, you're going to click Add Institution. You'll fill out all the information it asks for, all the usual stuff. And again, this is where you'll attach your transcripts for us to review. So our team will use this information to determine eligibility and preparedness for transferring to RISD. And so for more on that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Greg.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over what the transfer credit evaluation process looks like here at RISD. It's kind of broken up into three parts. Your transcripts will be reviewed by the Experimental and Foundational Studies Division, what we call as EFS or Foundations, the Liberal Arts Division, and then also the major department that you've selected will also review your credits for what can be potentially applied towards requirements within your program. The types of credits we evaluate, as mentioned previously from Emily, was regionally accredited institutions. We do require a grade of C or higher. That is important for transfer here at RISD. The other components we do accept are examinations as well. So we do accept AP exams with a score of 4 or higher are required on those. We do also accept the International Baccalaureate examinations, just the higher level examinations only. Those are going to be 5 or higher is the grade required to receive credit for those. And then lastly, I make note of the A levels. If you've taken any A levels, we would want to take a look at those for potential transfer as well. Emily touched on it, but the most important thing for our review is going to be that once you've completed your semester, trimester, quarter, whatever your institution completes, have that transcript sent to us for review. So that way we can give you the best picture of how your credits would transfer towards either a BFA or a BArch here at RISD. That's pretty much it for me. I'm gonna kind of toss it back to Emily, and I'm gonna hang out if there's any questions regarding credits or specific exams or anything that you have questions on. Just let us know in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Greg. That's super helpful. I think it's really great for, prospective transfer students to kind of be able to get a peek inside what the other end of the process looks like. So, again, if you have any questions about your particular transcripts, your particular, college experience, this is the time to ask the questions because we've got the expert here with us right now. But we're going to jump back into the application itself. That is a recommendation. So these are again pretty straightforward. We'll need 1 to 3 letters of recommendation. Be thoughtful in your selection. Select folks who know your performance in the classroom, but also outside of it, your character, your potential as a RISD student. Because we're on that sort of month mark before the deadline, please reach out to your recommenders sooner rather than later. I know on the other side of it, it's helpful to have as much time as possible as a recommender to fill out all of that information. So just reach out to the folks in your life who might be willing to write a letter of recommendation on the sooner end. You're going to add their names to the application, their information. Where it says relationship, that's where you're going to put their relationship to you. So if they were your professor or your advisor for your first year at college, you can write first year advisor or professor. And that'll just help us understand why they know you. Next up is going to be statement of purpose. Our advice here is to be specific, creative, and to proofread. When you're writing your essay or pasting it into the RISD application form, just be mindful of formatting. It's really helpful for us if you arrange your essay in a way that makes it easy to read. So that's why we have this bullet point of just dividing your essay into multiple shorter paragraphs. Be specific about why you'd be a good fit for RISD and why RISD would be a good fit for you. It goes both ways. And then also be specific about the major you'd like to study. You don't just have to write a cover letter. You can like really be creative with this and tell us a story, share something that's important to you, your identity. Those types of things are really a great place to showcase more of your personality and creativity. So again, this is what it's going to look like. You have up to 650 words. A lot of folks will type this out in a different, like in Google Docs or in Word, and then copy and paste it into um, the chat box here. You can also upload a Word or PDF document, so it's up to you. But we just want to make sure that you have proofread and formatted it in a way that represents your work best. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back really quickly. You'll see that right beneath statement of purpose, there is an option to submit a resume. It's not required, but if you've had work experience, if you think that could be relevant to sort of your story, then you can totally upload a resume as a Word document or a PDF. And if you want to include any other insight to other interests you have beyond art, you can either include it in the resume or list it in another document and send it to our email address, and we can add it to your application. You'll also notice that below resume is portfolio instructions. We're actually going to go over portfolio after we kind of go over submitting the application. So we're going to talk about submitting. It's again very straightforward. You're going to see on the review page, it'll let you know what things you still have left to complete and what you're ready to save. So if this were my application, I need to go back in and submit my statement of purpose and some of these portfolio items. But after I've gotten all that cleared up, I should see a button that says submit application and pay. So that'll be your next step. If the application fee prevents you from applying, reach out to us. We can help navigate that and provide fee waivers. And then once you submit your application, you're going to have access to the most magical place, the applicant portal. And just remember, you do need to submit your application in order to access your applicant portal. So Applicant Portal is going to be your one-stop shop for checking your application status, seeing your checklist, submitting your financial aid forms, all of that good stuff. So once you've started your RISD application, you'll get access to your portal, and then you can check what you need to submit in your checklist. Just keep in mind it takes like up to 24 hours for updates to populate here. So sometimes you might upload something and then it still says we're awaiting it. It's just because there's systems that are still in conversation with one another. I recommend submitting your portfolio through the applicant portal. In fact, that's the only way to do it. So you're gonna scroll to the bottom of the applicant portal page, and you'll see a button to upload your portfolio via this portal. So let's talk a little bit about portfolio. If you've joined us in a previous webinar, you've probably heard some of this info before, but I always think it's good to make sure we're on the same page. So we're going to look for 12 to 20 images, your best and most recent work. For the transfer application, this work should be mostly major specific, and that's because you are applying directly to a major versus first year students or first year applicants who are applying undecided. We also welcome variety, so just because a lot of your work should be major specific doesn't mean everything has to be. It's actually great to see work that relates to our Foundations Year program. I'll talk about that a bit in a second. And then personality, risk-taking, and originality, in short, your point of view, is really essential because it helps us understand why you might have something new or interesting to say while you're here at RISD. So again, those instructions will be found on the application here, but you're not submitting it via a third party platform. You'll be submitting it via the applicant portal. So once you navigate to the portfolio submission, you will see these instructions, acceptable file formats, and then you're just going to drag or select fi your files into this box that's highlighted in blue. You'll click Start Upload, and then a message will pop up to let you know how many files you'll be uploading, and that it'll take about a minute, and then you can just press OK. You can access your portfolio by clicking the tab at the top that says Your Portfolio, and you can edit each slide by selecting Edit Details. A window will pop up where you can enter the title of your piece, the year, size, medium, and a brief description. Should you want to speak to your artwork, please do so in the description box, but not the slide itself, and keep it brief. And also keep in mind that you cannot edit the orientation of your document from this edit details page. You'll need to sort of re-upload a file if the orientation looks wrong. And we can't go back and fix this for you after you've submitted the portfolio. So just make sure all of your work is correctly oriented as you'd like it to be in these thumbnails before you, confirm the submission. So here we're just showing the process of what it might look like to go in and update that. And then you can just preview each slide to make sure it's correct. Once you're done uploading all of your portfolio images and everything looks good to you, you'll press continue. Of course, for the sake of demonstration, I've only uploaded 3 images here, but if I were applying, I definitely want at least 12 thumbnails here before I clicked continue. Some portfolio format reminders, if you're going to take notes at all, take notes on this right now. Orient your images before uploading. Again, you cannot edit the orientation of your files once they're uploaded. I apologize for that typo. Upload 12 to 20 individual files. Please do not upload one 20-page PDF or one 15-minute video. We really would like just 12 to 20 individual files. And then description should go in the edit details description box, not directly typed onto your files themselves. The works should speak for themselves, and if we want additional information, we'll find it in that caption section. Another common question, do I only show work related to my desired major? Not necessarily, though it should feel like it's directed towards one major. So admissions officers and faculty want to see if you'd be a good fit for the department, but also that you have some skills from that sort of foundation curriculum equivalent. What not to include? It's a great question. You can learn more in our portfolio tips webinars, but I'll just touch on what RISD generally discourages. Basically, we want to see your original ideas and point of view. So anything that is not your original idea or point of view is going to be a recommendation to not include. So we say, please don't include any floor plans, screenplays, master copies, or derivative work, fan art, more than 3 images on a slide, work that you're not proud of, work that's greater than 3 years in time, so 3 years old or more, and work that doesn't speak to your personality. Again, portfolio tips webinars are going to have more info about that. An example about just a really quick example of sort of taking a master copy and making it your own. Instead of just directly copying Monet's piece here on the left, like mark for mark, this photographer was able to explore the subject matter and the composition through their own individual style. And it addresses questions of artifice and femininity and strength and notions of beauty and glamour, all of the same topics, but in a different way and within their own voice. All right, folks, we're nearing the end, and then we'll open it up for questions. One more thing I want to touch on is that we do have a foundation year at RISD, but as a transfer student, you skip past the traditional EFS year and you instead just participate in the summer EFS program. And your enrollment at RISD actually depends on that performance and successful completion of the summer program, basically just meaning you need to pass the summer EFS program. If you already have 18 comparable college foundations credits, you may be able to be waived from summer EFS, but that's ultimately the decision of the Dean of EFS, like Greg mentioned. So if you believe that's the case for you, we can help you navigate that, but we can't guarantee anything either way. EFS and summer EFS consists of 3 studios, so there's going to be drawing, design, and spatial dynamics. And again, since you'll be bypassing the formal first year, you'll take a condensed version of this program prior to your fall semester. All right, three more slides, and then we'll kind of cover some questions. So this is a look at the timeline of the transfer application. We're right in the middle of February. The middle of March is going to be the deadline. We will be reviewing applications from the deadline until mid-April, and then we'll be releasing decisions end of April to early May. As you're working on final touches and entering this last month, these are what we recommend you do. We recommend you ask a teacher or a parent or mentor, counselor, peer to look over your application. I definitely recommend proofreading your essays in creative ways, like reading an essay out loud or putting it through a software that will read it out to you, that type of thing. Proofread your portfolio descriptions, double check that your documentation of your artwork is clear, and just, keep checking back to your applicant portal to make sure things are looking on track. So this is the sort of final transfer app checklist I'll leave you with today before I open it up for questions. You've already completed the first thing on the list, at least. Maybe some of you have completed more items, but this is what you should sort of focus on doing before that March 17th deadline. And you're welcome to screenshot this and check off the boxes as you complete them. I do have an FAQ section, but I'm going to open it up. We've been kind of just talking at you for a while, so I'm going to see if a conversational Q&A is more suited. Maren, do we have any questions by
Yeah,
chance?
we do have one question that is quite common, and it does deal with credits as well. So, Greg, you might want to jump in with this too. But somebody is wondering about um, if by this spring, they graduate with their associates in studio art, so they have about 60 credits earned. What at what would they more likely enter RISD as a sophomore or as a junior? How would that work?
Yeah. First off, congratulations on the upcoming associate's degree. Hopefully you have a great rest of your spring semester. With the 60 credits going into, I believe she referenced the textiles program. Textiles has a lot of specificity in their sophomore year in regards to course requirements. We don't see a lot of courses directly transfer into that sophomore level. So I would forecast that they would transfer to RISD as a sophomore. I think the other part of their question was, would they forfeit the credits that potentially don't come in towards textiles? The departments have what's called non-major studio elective areas and maybe some other areas that it could be potentially utilized. So I wouldn't say immediately that they'd be forfeit. I think they'd be looked at and viewed to see if they could meet other requirements. And then lastly, what it would do is if they do come in, it would provide a little flexibility for students later maybe in their junior year, they want to look at maybe going abroad for a study abroad program, or maybe declaring a concentration if there's an area somewhere outside of their major that they're interested in doing. So I definitely would forecast sophomore. I don't think it would put them in at the junior level because of the specificity in that program.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another question that we got is specific to the portfolio. So, Emily, when we say, no more than 3 images on one page, is it recommended to show process images or sketches on a different page or include them on the one slide with the final work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we tend to recommend showcasing your final completed work because really at the end of the day, that work should speak for itself in a lot of ways. But with that being said, it's great to include in progress or process-based imagery or documentation to a couple of pieces in your portfolio if you feel like your process is a really important part about how you think and make. So maybe pick one or two projects where you want to showcase process. And then you can kind of go about it one or two ways. You might choose to use one of your slides as, just the finished documentation, and then use another slide with 2 or 3 images on it of the process. Maybe the initial sketch and then what it was like for you to make it, and then whatever you think is most relevant, and sort of have two slides that just correspond to one piece. Or you could just limit it to one in progress image and then the final piece next to it on one slide. Ultimately, it's up to your discretion, but just keeping it more concise than overwhelming because we really want to focus on the work itself. So in progress work, process-based work, fine to include, just limit it.
Excellent. So we did get a question. Is it possible to take the foundation year, EFS, despite being a transfer student?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's a really great question because a lot of students are coming from really diverse educational backgrounds. So, definitely something I'd be interested to hear Greg talk a little bit more about. But our eligibility is pretty sort of strict in that if you have a bachelor's degree, you are not eligible sorry, if you have if you have college credits over 21 or a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, you can't enter RISD as a first year student. So our summer EFS program is very comparable to that full foundation year. It's just a more condensed version of it. And unfortunately, transfer students just can't complete that sort of traditional first year program. But I guess I'm going to pass it to Greg to talk a little bit more about, the transfer process from a more, maybe a STEM background or a more like diverse educational background that's not studio art.
Sure, I would agree with you. And the lucky part about the summer EFS program is that a lot of the faculty members that teach also teach during the normal foundation program. So your experience with those faculty members sort of ingrains you into kind of the community and what you'd see going around campus upon entry in the fall. From a more of a STEM background, I think the summer EFS program would set you up really, really great for a transition directly into the sophomore year of the major, pending completion of your previous credits transferring over. That's generally what we see the most. We don't see a lot of precedent for going into the first year, the full first year, 18 credits in foundations based on transfer applications.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add that you sort of brought up when you're speaking, Greg, is that we are reviewing your applications to make sure you're ready to come to RISD. So if you are admitted to RISD, know that we think you can handle the sophomore year, and in the summer EFS program without, doing the full EFS program. So like if you end up being admitted to RISD, take comfort in the fact that we have a rigorous review process and we're confident in your ability to thrive here.
Absolutely. Um, how long is the summer EFS program?
Is it 6 weeks, Marin? I think you might be the better
It's
answerer for that.
5. I
It's
was
5.
thinking about it. Wait. Nope, it's 6. Guess what? It is 6.
It's
Gosh.
6.
You know what? You are the transfer specialist because I was mixing up pre-college, which
And
is
then I was thinking
5 weeks.
about winter session. So there's a few different programs at RISD that are like 5 or 6 weeks.
Yes, but you know
So
what? I said it so confidently, like 5. No, it's 6, absolutely 100% 6 weeks.
Mhm.
It includes, just as Emily discussed, it just includes the studio classes. So you're not taking the liberal arts, which is why, we would like to see that will have, 12 liberal arts by the time you enter. So you're not too far behind, but it's really just those studio classes for 6 weeks, all day, every day. It's awesome. It's awesome. And it's a great transition to RISD. And it's also a great opportunity to work with other students who are going to be going into different departments in the fall. So it's super fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does everything that the regular first year does, and that you're like building community across majors and disciplines, and then also meeting folks who might be going into the same major as you. So it's great.
Let's see. So, somebody had asked about if our studio classes can be taken online if they live um, across the country from RISD.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't offer any credit bearing online courses. At the same time, our continuing education department offers a lot of really great courses for adults and youth that are online and in person. So I highly recommend checking out continuing education to learn more about the different programs you can take online. Again, they won't lead you towards a degree necessarily, but they will help build your portfolio. They'll help give you exposure to different types of artistic practices, and they'll connect you with teachers, and that can be really helpful. So check out continuing education to kind of see more of those classes. Typically, admissions in the registrar's office sort of negotiate and navigate, help students navigate enrolling in the college full time. So it looks a lot different for the continuing education portion versus admissions in registrar's office who are dealing with full-time residential students.
So this next question is really good for Greg. This person is currently attending their first year at an art school with foundational art classes. Does that factor into omitting some or all of the EFS summer program, or is it RISD specific enough that I should expect to attend regardless? So I guess we could speak to like what could waive any incoming transfer student from taking summer EFS.
Yeah, so historically, the dean of EFS will review not only your transcripts, but also the portfolio as well in making that decision of whether attendance in the summer EFS program can be waived. It certainly is RISD centric enough on its own, where I have seen students that have come from a first year program with foundational art program still be required to take the RISD courses in the summer program. So if it were to go the other way, where they were to waive you, what would happen is we would review and apply any of your foundational credits towards your BFA requirements in the foundation area. So they would be applied one way or another, but it would really come down to once your application is being reviewed by the division of the dean of the EFS program, that would really be the ultimate say in how that would go.
Excellent. Just got another question about spring entry, and I know we touched on it in the presentation, but uh, spring entry we have not had been able to open that application for some time now, and I also don't foresee that happening anytime soon. It has to do very much with space availability. So similar to transfer admission in general, but when it comes to spring entry, it's even more dependent on space availability. Um, and I know you have to have a certain amount of credits in order to be eligible to apply for the spring, again, if it was open. But I also do want to say that, frankly, even if we were able to open the spring deadline, I always like to let people know that there just isn't any financial aid available for transfers who are admitted for spring entry. So either way, I honestly would advise you to apply for the summer fall entry, which is in March, March 17th for this year. But we haven't been able to open the spring deadline. So that question that's popped up. Okay, this is another question about the portfolio. If floor plans should not be included in the portfolio, what kind of architecture specific pieces, this is a great question for you, Emily, would you want to see from prospective architecture students?
Yeah, it's a great question because the RISD architecture program actually looks a little bit different than other schools and portfolio requirements. So I'm glad that you asked this question. What I'll say is take a look at the RISD architecture curriculum. It looks different than other schools' architecture curriculums. We really have a focus on looking at spatial dynamics more broadly before diving into like the structural negotiations that architects, engineers, and builders have to sort of navigate as workers in the built environment. So reframe how you're thinking about architecture. At RISD, it's not strictly just this is what a building needs to look like. It's also challenging what a built structure can look like. I would recommend including some three-dimensional work, whether that's models, physical models that you make with Bristol paper and your tacky glue. It can be as simple as that to sort of navigate form and texture. and massing. And then you can also do more abstract sculptures, like work with ceramics, work with, if you have access to a woodworking class or a glass studio or whatever it might be, use your three-dimensional creation to showcase how you are able to think through making. And then the other thing I'll recommend is including drawing. I know it can feel um, different for architects to include more traditional drawings in their portfolios. But it's actually such an important part about how you're able to view the world around you and implement it into your practice. So instead of a floor plan that's two-dimensional and very technical and kind of jargony and not as sort of relevant to the practice of being a designer in the larger scale, maybe just take your sketchbook around with you and draw the buildings that inspire you, draw the house you live in. Um, you don't have to rely on the technical aspects. This is your education, not your job. So it's an opportunity to be more playful and more experimental with how you think about architecture more broadly. You can tell I'm interested in this subject, which is why I could talk about it for a really long time. But it kind of goes, I mean, that can be applied to a lot of different majors. At RISD, we are, I guess, playful is a good word for it. We're very playful about how we think about what a particular discipline can be. So allow that to kind of seep into your portfolio. And I think that's usually an asset.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Emily. And yeah, exactly. When it comes to any major, just keep in mind, I always like to remind transfer applicants, it can certainly be daunting knowing that you are applying directly to a major and equally exciting. But I always like to remind them that most transfers come in as fall semester sophomores. A lot of our transfer applicants are current, first year students at their school. But even still, keep in mind there's so many ways when it comes to all of our different majors to showcase interest in that department without having a ton of experience in architecture, in film animation video, in glass. So anything that you have, anything that's adjacent to that, that just showcases to this department that you want to be a part of it is great. And we ultimately want to learn about you and your design ideas and your creativity and your experimentation. And when it comes to RISD, any RISD portfolio, we want to see your openness to try new things and your openness to say like, oh, I'm excited to do that and explore these materials and these ideas. Like just having that openness. So it's other disciplines are welcome. Of course, it should be absolutely evident you want to apply and you're applying to the major of your choice. But also in the discussion with EFS and all that, it's certainly helpful to include in your portfolio some examples of foundational work. But of course, showcasing your personality in those pieces too is always the best idea. Um, okay, another question popped up. Are architecture studio credits from a summer program transferable?
Depends on the summer program. That's what I would say. Greg, do you have any additional insight?
Yeah, it all depends on the institution that the they're coming from. That's mainly what we'd want to look at. We need to see kind of what the transcript would look like, and then we kind of delve into the course descriptions. But would certainly be evaluated by our foundation department for potential studio equivalents as well.
Mm.
Yeah. Actually, that reminded me. Greg, would you mind talking a little bit about going a little bit more into experimental and foundation studies credits in terms of sometimes even after you take summer EFS, there might be some lingering extra credits you have to make up. But I know that with EFS, that doesn't mean you have to find time for another EFS spatial dynamics class, for example. You can still take a RISD major specific class that is more aligned with EFS to fulfill that credit. Would you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So our foundation here is in foundation is a full 18 credits, the summer EFS program being 9 of those credits. So you'd come in and you'd have what I call 9 credits of flexibility to take studio coursework in areas that you're interested in. The once you've been accepted and you've matriculated to RISD, the foundations department, after working with you through the summer, is kind of really eager to see what you're interested in pursuing, not only within your major, but potentially also across the campus at RISD. And once that happens, we would send them a notification to say, hey, this is a textile student, but they're taking graphic design in this specific semester. They want to apply it towards their one of their 9 credits remaining for foundation requirements. And in almost all cases, we have seen the EFS department say, yes, that's great with us. We're glad that they're doing that. So it just gives you that little bit of flexibility to kind of experiment across campus
Mm,
for a variety of kind of disciplines that you might be interested in.
awesome. Thank you. Um, we still have some time, so if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to enter them. And if you wouldn't mind, let's see. I did see a question pop up in the other chat. Let me see. Um, okay. If I'm a potential photography transfer, would it be appropriate to include traditional abstract or ceramic work? Is question one. So actually, that I'm going to address to you, Emily. And then there's another transfer credit question I'll address to you, Greg.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as a potential photography transfer student, I would say that it would be appropriate to include traditional abstract ceramic works. Photography is at a really interesting place as a discipline in general and in how we think about what it can be as a medium. And I think that those faculty members are really excited to see experimentation across disciplines and mediums. And if you can relate sort of those other mediums to your more photographic work, that would be really excellent to see in a portfolio. So I would encourage you to include all projects you think are worthy of review to some extent.
Excellent. And then the question they had about for you, Greg, how old can AP studio credits be while still being valid to transfer?
Yeah, I always there's generally a 10-year rule on accepting credits that a shelf life of credits. With examinations, it's different. Alex, what I say is send them anyway, because we always want liberal arts to kind of take a look to see if there's anything that you've completed that can meet a requirement. If it's outside that 10 years, we might have to petition for an exception to academic policy, which is common. It's not unique. It's not a barrier or anything like that. But I would recommend sending those results regardless of age on them.
Excellent. I did get a question that I'd like to address about just a letter of recommendation. It is absolutely, somebody had asked, is it allowed to submit a letter of recommendation from high school? I would say it's allowed, but I would recommend for transfer applicants, you have 1 to 3 letters of recommendation. You can absolutely include a letter from a teacher you had in high school. I would also highly recommend including a letter from a college professor, particularly a studio professor, when in terms of a transfer application. Again, not required to have a studio art professor write your letter of recommendation, but for this application, for the transfer application, considering that it's going directly to, the major, you're skipping over EFS, we can get more insight that way. But you're also welcome to have a letter of recommendation sent from somebody, a teacher you had in high school. You do have up to 3 letters you can have included. Another question. Let's see. I would also say to well, actually, Emily, would you mind giving some examples? I mean, this is neither of us are necessarily, I personally at least haven't taken like textiles, even though it's a class that a department I'm always deeply fascinated by. But do you have any recommendations for what somebody might want to include in like a portfolio to textiles?
I mean, my recommendation is just more generalizable, which is for any major, if you're wondering what should I include, just take a look at what current students are making and what faculty are making, and that'll give you a really good sense for what that community is thinking about within the discipline and as artists. So with textiles in particular, I know that their sophomore curriculum, like Greg was saying, is pretty technically focused. There's like I was talking to one of our tour guides maybe last year, and she was like, yeah, sophomore year, you're just making 80 sample tech, you're just making. So if you want to demonstrate that skill set of being able to iterate and design and try out different colors and your ability to grasp color theory and those types of things, those are going to be more relevant for the reviewers than, any like one particular project. So try to reflect the skills that you think they'll love to see rather than just like the technical proficiency, if that makes sense. So yeah, your use of color, concept, composition, and ability to iterate would be recommendations I would have. And then I saw a similar question for FAV. Again, take a look at what current students are making, take a look at what faculty are making, and see how you can allow your work to reflect similar but not identical themes and ideas and investigations.
Exactly. And definitely, check out, as we mentioned earlier in this hour, check out the department pages to get a sense of what they're making, just to get to learn more about the department. There's really wonderful, detailed information like the curriculum. You can learn about faculty, like, do your homework but it's really fun to explore too. And we are winding down, and I just don't want to forget to remind you all of the exciting info sessions we have coming up. So Thursday, we have an info session, a portfolio tips about documenting your portfolio. It's really, really helpful considering that, we're a month out from the application. You might just want some extra tips on documenting. As we mentioned earlier, next week, Tuesday, we're going to be highlighting our two new majors, art and computation and sound. We're going to be joined by faculty members of those departments. It's going to be awesome. And they'll speak a little bit to like suggestions for what to think about when putting together a portfolio for either of these departments. And then the following day, Wednesday, we are going to have RISD chats, the transfer student experience. So you can hear from current RISD students, RISD transfer students, about their experience at RISD, their transition to RISD, all of that. So please check those out. I just put a link in the chat for upcoming info sessions. Definitely, if you can, check them out. They'll all be recorded aside from RISD chats. That's never recorded, so that's definitely a kind of like an improv class. What you see there is like it will not be repeated, but everything else will be recorded and posted. Anyway, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, and I did see a couple of questions come in, but please also know if you have any questions at all, if you need clarifying questions, especially we know how particularly confusing, and perhaps and overwhelming the transfer application can be. So please feel free to reach out to us directly, admissions at risd.edu. I'll put it in the main chat. And we are happy to address your questions and help you just make sense of everything and help you navigate the process. Truly happy. So yeah, I'm going to hand it back to you, Emily, for kind of close us out.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Marion, so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you all today. Hope this has been helpful. I know it's a lot of information, so hopefully what you got out of this is basically we're here to help, and we're here to help you navigate the process. And the great news is that if you end up coming to RISD after admissions works with you, it'll likely be Greg working with you at the on the registrar's office side. So thank you, Greg, for joining us and for providing all of that great information. We're all available to help. Good luck with the application process, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their week. All right.
Bye,
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
Emily.
everyone.
Thanks, Emily.